President Cyril Ramaphosa has reassigned the country's state security services to his office under the custody of Minister in the Presidency Mondli Gungubele. Criminologist Prof Guy Lamb joins us to explain the significance of the move. Thank you very much, Professor Lamb, for joining us this afternoon. So what is your assessment of the State Security Agency and how should we understand it in relation to this latest move?
Well, thanks, Didi. We were actually waiting for this to happen. I mean, the announcement was made back in April and in August last year. This was after the insurrection, riots and looting that took place in KwaZulu-Natal and parts of Gauteng. And a key issue with that was the underperformance on the State Security Agency. It was in terms of the quality of intelligence, but also it had to do with kind of factional battles and kind of alignments that were happening within intelligence structures to certain factions and their involvement in that sort of insurrection and looting that took place. So the announcement was made by the president back in August, and now they're finally moving on it. I think it's quite important because there have been connections in the first publication of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry that's kind of connected problematic behavior to individuals who've been in the State Security Agency. Of course, there's issues around, kind of attacks on key points, national key points such as Parliament. So it's quite important that certainly the president starts to take some action around the intelligence services. And the process of doing that is, I think it's the most prudent way is to kind of pull the responsibility for the intelligence structure, namely the State Security Agency, within to the presidency and drive a series of reforms. And then hopefully in the future is to kind of then take it out of the presidency and give it some form of independence, because if it remains within the presidency, there obviously are some sort of dangers that will emerge as a result of that. So it's a very significant thing that's happened.
What are some of those dangers you perceive?
Well, I mean, it comes down to around that it can be used and abused. If it's kind of centralized just in the president, then you could see, for example, just as the president as an individual, not necessarily Ramaphosa, but as a kind of a democratic concern is that you could see the president using and abusing intelligence services for his or her own gains. Certainly that's what we saw under the Zuma presidency, where the intelligence services were used and abused to pursue certain objectives and certain factional interests. So I think the kind of issue of maintaining it within the presidency long term isn't necessarily an ideal solution. But for now, to try and push through the reforms and the recommendations that came out in the high-level panel that looked into the intelligence services under Sidney Mufamadi a number of years ago, the only way really to do it is for it to put it in the presidency.
Let's just expand on that, right? So this age-old argument of putting people in positions that not only do they understand, but they have, even if it's not the qualifications, but an understanding of. So with Mr. Mondli Gungubele himself, what does his appointment tell you, and what should we know about him in relation to this new portfolio?
In terms of, as this is offering political oversight, so this is the minister in the presidency who kind of is dealing with a range of other issues. I think it's really important when it comes to the intelligence services. Obviously, the minister needs to have a relatively good understanding of how the intelligence services function. But from the state security agencies, we need to make sure that we've got experienced, professional government employees in those positions who can be trusted. And I think that's been a key issue up until now, where there are elements within the State Security Agency who can't be trusted. So I think it's obviously the minister has to have a good understanding of it, but needs to be acting in a professional way that fulfills his or her responsibility as a minister. But in the case of the State Security Agency, it's really important that we have solid leadership at the top of that agency.
You cited the July unrest, you cited the attacks on state institutions. Does it appear to you that South Africa has a security or intelligence crisis?
Well, we've had an intelligence crisis for a number of years because they were used for factional issues. So certainly got hollowed out, got kind of distorted in many ways. So there has been this crisis, and we're now seeing a move to try and avert that. In terms of the specific incidences, we did definitely have a crisis around the insurrection, around the looting that happened, and we haven't really got to the bottom of that. We've had a few individuals who've appeared in court, but with sort of no major sort of ringleaders have emerged out of all of that. So I think that remains a crisis. In terms of the current events that we've seen, namely the fire within Parliament and the attack on the SABC facility in the Free State, those seem to be separate attacks. They don't seem to be connected to some sort of conspiracy, but certainly they do. These series of events do really point to the need to have a lot more professional, advanced, competent intelligence service.
Professor Guy Lamb is a criminologist. Thank you very much for helping us make sense of these latest developments.